Hello and welcome to As It Is Written in the Cosmos. We live in a world that is full of nuanced details, where each is like the finest brushstroke of the most careful and focused painter. Within each such stroke lies a nesting doll of cascading complexity. In life, we are born and live. We do not come in a box with an instruction manual nestled between the layers, but are born into a world of mystery and wonder. Not everyone sees the world the same, but rather our perception is a result of our experiences, our awareness, and our focus. This can be compared to an infinitely detailed painting where we look at it through different means. If we are extremely zoomed in and focused on the finest of details, then the world we see will be composed of what is within our field of view. Like using a microscope to look at the life contained within a droplet of water. This produces an increasingly high-resolution picture of the specific portion of the painting that our focus is on. However, when our focus remains on these areas, other portions of the painting become blurrier, more distorted, and can exit our view entirely. Alternatively, if we pull back and look at the painting to see a larger region of the overall picture, then by the very act of drawing our attention outward, our awareness to a bigger picture is fed. And yet, like looking at that very same droplet of water with our eyes alone, we lose a degree of detail that comes with closer inspection. As a result, the sharpness of the picture is less in a given section, but the field of view is increased. Each aspect provides a degree of insight that the other cannot. For example, if we hike on a mountain trail, then we can see the roughness and intricate details of the terrain. But only from a bird's eye view can we see the ripples of the mountain ranges or the weavings of the rivers. There is no end to the degree of zooming in and zooming out that can be done to look at the different aspects of this painting. And in the same way as a picture can take on a completely new view when the dimension of time is added, so too can the picture of reality transform with added dimensions, which are seen by the parallels that exist between all aspects. Like looking at a picture, there's only one way to make out what this painting that we call life shows, and that is by zooming out further and further to see more and more parts of the bigger picture, and by zooming in more and more by carefully focusing on the intricate detail of many aspects of that picture. For example, perhaps it may appear as if there is nothing of value in various aspects of life. We all have the things we choose to dismiss or avoid. It does not matter what it is. When we give them our attention, it is like finding another puzzle piece where the puzzle can only be completed through discovery, trial, and error. Regardless of which pieces we have put together, we each combine them to create our own picture of how we see things. The more connections we make, the greater the capacity to not get stuck. This is alike to a road system. If the information is limited, like a small town with very few residents, then the ability for them to move about is high, even when the roads are not built up. However, congestion quickly occurs when the number of travelers, the amount of information, increases. That very same congestion is alleviated by the expansion of the road system to include more roads, higher flow rate roads, and higher capacity roads. Even so, we can still find ourselves stuck in traffic if the congestion is too high. Another way to improve overall road capacities is by adding another dimension, such as bridges, tunnels, and even other forms of travel such as airplanes. This applies precisely to information. If we have not made the connections so as to allow for sufficient capacity of flow of information to occur, then we will find ourselves stuck. For example, if somebody sits in on a calculus class having no mathematical background, their connections will be incapable of supporting the flow of information, and they will be unable to absorb what is presented to them. Alternatively, if someone has gone through the process of building sufficient connections, they will be able to absorb the information, at least in part. What gets through depends on which roads one has built. Take, for example, what is known as activation energy. When two reactants are put together, in order for the reaction to proceed, they require energy to react. Otherwise, they will remain in their initial form. Someone who has spent their life studying and practicing chemistry involving reactions will have developed many of these such connections, and thus they will be able to absorb extensive amounts of information with each new reaction they encounter. However, if they have never considered this process outside of chemistry, they will still not have built the necessary connections so as to allow transmission of information in other forms. If that very same person began to learn a language, they would not consider the activation energy aspect of this process. Learning is precisely a reaction, where at any moment our mental universe is in a given state. When we encounter information, such as a new language, our capacity to react with it so that our mental universe transforms into a new state depends on if sufficient activation energy is input. For example, if someone walks by two people having a conversation in a language they do not know, they will not learn a new language from the encounter. At best, they may glean that the language exists. They may be able to make out which language it is, but won't be able to decipher any meaning within the context. If that very same person happened to have moved to a country where this language was the only language spoken, then the act of being exposed to the language over and over will improve their opportunities to begin to learn, though if they are doing so on their own with no assistance nor without any active focus on learning, they will not pick up very much. If they have a book they are studying and they are trying to speak the language to the best of their ability day in and day out, they will be putting much more energy into the reaction. Their mental universe, as a result, will consistently evolve towards improved understanding. If they have a teacher who is helping, this person can act as a catalyst to reduce the amount of activation energy necessary for the reaction to proceed. These reactions do not stop after each step, but rather can occur over and over to steadily progress from an initial state to a much higher state. This can be compared to walking up flights of stairs, where each step requires additional energy to be taken. When we arrive at each new floor, then we can freely move about in a similar manner to when we were on the previous floor. Several differences do occur on each such floor, however. For example, when we walk upstairs, then we actively increase our potential energy. This is the amount of energy a body has due to its relative positioning. Thus, moving to a next level causes a growth in energy as we absorb a portion of the activation energy necessary for the reaction to occur. In the same way, when we learn, then we increase our potential energy. This energy can be compared to the periodic table. When we begin to learn a new subject, it is like starting, for example, at hydrogen. As we learn more, gaining energy through the reactive process, we can input sufficient energy to transform to new stable states. As a result, we can grow like a particle absorbing energy from its environment so as to transform into larger elements in the periodic table. In the same way as hydrogen does not exhibit the properties of oxygen, nor oxygen of gold, and that all elements are differing in this manner, so too do we exhibit different traits as we learn and grow. If we have become extremely proficient in a subject, our capacity to learn can greatly deteriorate. For example, there is only so much that can be learned regarding basic addition. This process is alike to reaching the upper limit of the periodic table, where elements exist for much shorter durations due to their radioactivity. The only way to learn, then, is to combine systems like the atoms of the Earth. This is synonymous to moving up to the next octave. While systems cannot exist individually as atoms as large as Earth, conglomerations of many atoms are stable and able to grow to much larger sizes when this next octave is reached. This would be like progressing to algebra and other varieties of math, which are systems composed of less complex constituents as their building blocks, ones that when used in combination transform into an entirely new entity, just as atoms can transform into systems like the Earth. Once more, however, we reach an upper limit of radioactive instability in each case. This would be where algebra, or each variety of math, is learned. Beyond this would come the next octave again, a unit composed of even more such large building blocks. From a math perspective, this could be, for example, all of science. The same process occurs over and over as we progress higher through these octaves of the mental universe. However, with each new stage of reactionary growth upward, the activation energy required for change is higher. For example, atoms may collide in a place such as the sun to transform, but the sun will not exhibit drastic change from such collisions. The sun requires orders of magnitude more activation energy, such as another star, to drive a similar change. This is because steps of growth require a progressively more energy to occur, and as a result of the increasing amount of energy that needs to be input, then the transformation of state becomes more difficult, like the stairs increasingly getting larger and larger as we walk up them. Notably, when we learn, we expand our energy. This causes us to grow. As a result, we are capable of pulling in more energy to use, like an elephant compared to a mouse. This means that though the steps get bigger, we get bigger along with them and can counteract or even overwhelm the growth of the steps so that the transformation occurs more easily. This analysis demonstrates the opportunities that we have to learn by considering seemingly disconnected disciplines and what they tell us about the other. We can look at a given problem as a step of growth that can be achieved, where even if that problem appears as an impassable wall, we ourselves can grow sufficiently so that the wall shrinks to appear rather as one that can be climbed. And as we grow further, it can become alike to the smallest of bumps in the road. In this way, all things depend on the perspective of the observer.